History is full of so much garbage, so much trash that it is unbelievable that it isn't called out more often. There are so many principles that we just take for granted in history that are pure fiction, that are pure trash. But we take these things as fact because it is so ingrained into the general Western zeitgeist, or the general Western historical zeitgeist, I suppose I should say. These things would be like geology saying that everything has to take 8 billion years to form and nothing happens quickly, right? All these layers take millions of years to form, for example. And God help you if you say anything else. Although, interestingly enough, in stratigraphy, those layers seem to generate really quickly when it comes to human history, right? So we have stratigraphy for basic human history for just the past couple of thousands of years. Didn't take millions of years for all of that stuff to appear, right? And in some cases, it's like literally hundreds of feet of stratigraphy above ancient sites. Doesn't take millions of years for that, but everything else takes millions of years. Or the Big Bang Theory, for example, right? The Big Bang Theory is now so ingrained in all of science that gotta help you if you question it, right? Even though right now the James Webb Telescope has 100% finally proven it is completely wrong and it's completely trash. But we can move on from all of this garbage. Now, if this is triggering you, if somehow somewhere deep down inside of you, all of a sudden you think everything I'm saying now is crazy, don't take my word for any of this. Literally, go look at NASA's new evidence from the James Webb Telescope and watch all of the astronomers freak out because everything they thought was real about the Big Bang is complete nonsense. It's absolute trash, right? Plasma physics is starting to take center stage, and all of the old people stuck in these ways, all the old scientists, all the old cosmologists, or all of the brainwashed, young people and stuff who don't want to look outside of their field, right? They're all having to look at this and deal with this new crisis, right? This is a legit problem. So don't look at me. I'm not just making this up. This is not some weird fringe science or something that I got off the dark web. This is legitimate science from NASA. So I know we're talking about history. I'm just trying to paint a picture. So when you're doing historical studies, one of the things that we have to make sure that we are conscious of is that we have to make sure that we are not coming into history with any biases. Now, that is almost impossible, right? I get it. Like, everybody is going to have biases. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to watch out for biases. So it's not just looking out for biases from the material you're studying, it's also your own biases. Now, if you are willing to admit that you have biases, then you are already ahead of the game. You're winning, I promise you. No matter what you're doing in life, you're winning. And if you're conscious of these biases and you're making an effort to overcome them, yeah, you're a real researcher, you're a real scientist. That's what we want. And of course, the main way you overcome this is you apply basic critical thinking skills. And we've covered that a million times, but just keep that in mind. Keep asking objective questions and stay objective when you get the answers. And don't be afraid to look at something and say, I don't know. Now, why am I saying all of this? Well, I'm saying all of this stuff because I want to set the stage for what we're going to discuss today. And that is the concept of the Dark Ages and how absolutely ridiculous this concept is. All right, the whole situation of the Dark Ages is insane. I mean, there is no other word for what we deal with when we deal with the Dark Ages other than insanity. I mean, if you believe the Dark Ages, you've lost your mind. You have absolutely lost your mind. There's no other way to say it. Well, not looking. I guess you could be looking. You're looking at the screen right now, or you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm about to turn this off. Dude is insane. What the hell is he talking about? All of these people at high-level academic positions, they all believe in the Dark Ages. They all talk about it and place it within the timeline. How could all of those people be wrong and this random dude on the internet be right? So first of all, it's not just me making this claim on my own, right? I'm following in the research of much better people, much more brilliant people who have done the honest work out in the field and who have done the honest research over the past centuries. So, okay, check it out. This whole concept is not new. The concept of the Dark Ages is a weird variable that suddenly pops up during the Renaissance, right? Nobody was talking about the Dark Ages until certain books started being found or recovered or researched during the Renaissance period. So before this time, before the Renaissance, nobody was discussing a dark age. There was absolutely nobody going, oh yeah, man, do you remember when your great-great-great-great-grandpa was like in the Dark Ages, dude? Like, oh yeah, man, it really sucked, man. Like everybody was like eating the bugs and there was like plagues or something. And you know, nobody knows what's going on because they're dark. So they're like, I don't know what grandpa was doing. Grandpa was just running around with a stick hitting trees and squirrels. I don't know. It was dark, bro. What do you want from me? Right? Nobody was talking about the Dark Ages until the Renaissance created the Dark Ages. This concept was completely foreign to society, all right? So that's the very first bullet point of information that we have to remember whenever we start reading about the Dark Ages, because we know for a fact that no one cared about it until certain Renaissance authors suddenly started making it a reality. Now, the Renaissance is a huge problem for historians, right? One of the main problems with the Renaissance is the fact that a ton of forgeries are made during this period of time, right? No questions, no doubts. There are actually, I believe, hopefully not, I'd love to be proved wrong, but nowadays there are actually proven forgeries about like some of the Roman manuscripts and stuff like that that are still taught in schools as fact, even though the mainstream are the ones that proved they were forgeries, right? Old habits die hard. So this is a legit problem in our studies. So let's start here. The Renaissance is a whole talk in and of itself, but the reality is during the Renaissance, a whole lot of bad stuff technically goes on. A whole lot of corrupt forgery literature is written during this time. Now, if we are using our critical thinking skills, this fact, this bullet point of information about the Renaissance possibly being absolutely corrupt and full of forgeries has to be one of the staples of how we approach anything that comes out of this period of time, right? So if we ask the basic question, where did the Dark Ages come from? Right? So we look to the Renaissance. The Renaissance has all these records about the Dark Ages magically and suddenly, and some of those documents have absolutely been proven forgeries, and it gets even worse, there are other documents that are used to substantiate the Dark Ages which people will not allow scientists to test. Alright, so that's a huge problem. The very second that we are not allowed to test this documentation scientifically, right, we have to, I mean, you almost have to write it off. Because first of all, why would anyone be afraid of science getting their hands on these books and testing them, right? I mean, that's something that all humans should want. We should want to know our history. What's real? What's fake? What did these people really do? I mean, this is cool stuff. Or were these people playing a grift? These are all questions that we should all be asking whenever we look at the Renaissance, or anything in history really, right? But the reality is there is so much corruption around the Renaissance, and that's not just during our time period right now, you know, for example, people not letting us look at books or seeing the originals or whatever, but during the Renaissance time itself, we have corrupt individuals publishing corrupt books, right? The forgeries are legion out there. Now, why are the forgeries legion out there? One of the main reasons is that at this period of time, it was a fad to basically own ancient literature, right? Anyone who had like a book from ancient Rome or ancient Greece or any of these more older civilizations. I'm not going to use the term ancient because they're not ancient. The older civilizations, if you could get your hands on those works, you know, you were popular, you were the dude, you could be like, yeah, dude, I got the collector's item of you know, Roman book number 712 or whatever, right? That was going on, and that is like never discussed whenever somebody starts talking about the Dark Ages. Nobody ever starts off saying, hey, some of the information that we might have about the Dark Ages is possibly tainted and corrupt. That never happens. There is no warning at the beginning of anybody who, in the mainstream, that talks about the Dark Ages, right? The other problem with the Renaissance and relative to the Dark Ages is that when these books are being written or created, not just books, works, other kinds of works and stuff like that, these works, these forgeries, etc., they are being used to substantiate all kinds of claims, whether it be claims to like a throne or something like that, or a claim to property, right? These books were objectively, scientifically, provably used to substantiate people's power. I mean, basically, people used forgeries all over the place back then to get themselves some more money, or to get themselves more land, or to get themselves control over something. Now, this is a serious problem. So if we have forgeries being written that literally tell a lie about somebody's lineage from back in the Dark Ages, right? Like this dude was, the great-great-great-great-great-grandson of King Roman the Emperor the First or whatever, right? People are writing this stuff so that they can lay claims, to all of that stuff. Now why is this not focused on, man? This is a huge deal. If we have known books that are forgeries, that are willing to make up bullet points of information about the Dark Ages for a simple power grab, why should we trust any of the books from back then? Like, that's a legitimate problem, and that is a legitimate question that we need to be asking. Is it safe to trust any of those books? Now, I'm sure... Yes, okay, I mean, the reality is I'm hoping that at least some of them, yes, are absolutely legit, and there are some hopefully good, recordings or translations of older works or reprinting, recopying, or whatever of works. But, the reality is during the Renaissance, where the Dark Ages concept comes from, there was a ton of corruption. All right, so we get it. Okay, let's move on. Where do we go with this? Okay, so... to prove the Dark Ages aren't real, that's really, we could start, you know what, it's funny, I could probably just use all the information from the Renaissance and all the corruption that was going on to pretty much prove that the Dark Ages are garbage. We could do that. I think you could actually substantiate just from the disingenuousness of the writers from the Renaissance and their motives, right, their messed up motives. That's enough to put the Dark Ages into question and to get rid of it. And honestly, get rid of it, right? That leads us to the next question. All right, so why the hell are there Dark Ages at all? What was the point of putting in this weird period of about 1,000 years of darkness, of nothing happening? And I mean literally nothing basically happening. Right, you can go look right now and you can find a couple little things here or there that scientists or historians they'll try to throw out there and be like, oh yeah, this happened during the Dark Ages and this proves that it was right, or some, whatever. That evidence is few and far between, which makes sense because otherwise it wouldn't be called the Dark Ages, right? We don't have a lot of stuff from this make-believe period that never happened, right? It's not there, right? So the historians, they're grabbing and reaching like crazy. So we can put aside mainstream people and ignore them. But where does that leave us? All right, so let's look at what the claim is of what the Dark Ages are, and then I'm going to show you scientific evidence, historical scientific evidence that proves them wrong. And by them, I mean anybody that believes in the Dark Ages, right? And I'm not getting down on anyone that has bought into it and they're just, on the sidelines. Whenever you hear somebody from a position of authority make a claim and nobody from other positions of that level of authority doesn't disagree, right? It kind of gets put into the zeitgeist and people who don't care will go along with it. And so I'm not getting down on people for believing in the Dark Ages, but what I am saying is that it's time to reevaluate staples of our historic record, because our historic record is absolute garbage. I mean, it is just full of BS, lies, etc. And I think pretty much any historian knows that to one degree or another. But one of the things that we have absolutely learned in like the past 20, 30 years is that our history has been destroyed, subverted, made up, etc. And it, for various reasons. All right, so that's a different talk as well. All right, so what the hell are the Dark Ages? So the Dark Ages, or the term Dark Ages, basically refers to the early medieval period in European history that spans basically between the 5th and 15th century AD or CE or whatever the hell you want to call it. All right, so now this is a term that's historically used to describe a perceived decline in civilization. A perceived decline, that is important, perceived. Remember, this stuff just pops out of the Renaissance, out of nowhere. Right now, there's a reason why these guys do it, and it's absolutely for greed and corruption and power grabbing, but it is absolutely a perception that is created, right? And so the idea is that during the Dark Ages, between the 5th and 15th century, like all kinds of stuff everything goes down basically, right? I mean, the idea is that nothing happens, and that's a huge problem. So put a pin in that. The fact that there are historians on this planet right now that believe for about 1,000 years, humans did nothing. Humans literally did nothing. They just suddenly forgot how to write. They forgot how to read. They forgot how to sculpt. They forgot how to farm. They forgot everything magically, right? Matt, you have to believe in magic. If you believe in the Dark Ages and you believe what the Dark Ages claims, you believe in magic. You're insane. Anyone who, there you go, right? So there, critical thinking has led us to the supposition, or not the supposition, but the fact that if somebody wholeheartedly believes in the Dark Ages, you're insane. You've lost your mind. It's not real. It's not there. You can believe in it, but you're crazy. You're the crazy one. All right. So here's the problem. We have an entire century of darkness, quote unquote, and basically this starts with the collapse of the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire, and that's a whole other problem, man, with the Eastern and Western Roman Empire. We'll get into that in a completely different show. That's a whole other subject. The fact that people say that there was an East and a West, it's just so dumb. Chronology is so messed up in the mainstream. It's hilarious. All right. Okay, so basically what happens is, according to mainstream, is that the collapse of the Roman Empire kicks off this decline in all humanity. Because what happened, they say, is there was some sort of like internal strife. All these invasions were going on. Economic decline. Somehow economic decline happened. Okay, economic decline can happen, but as the economy declines, suddenly there's layers upon layers upon layers of dirt that builds up on all these cities and the Colosseum, etc. Yes, did you know that? Did you know that economical decline equals hundreds or dozens to hundreds of feet of sediment suddenly appearing on top of buildings? Did you realize that? I mean, isn't that crazy? See, the geologists, they're not looking in the right spot. Geologists, all you guys need to do is look for economical decline, and suddenly cities will just be buried under all kinds of dirt and rock. It's amazing how that happens, right? If you don't make money, suddenly rock and dirt just build up for hundreds of feet. All right, okay. So, what else do we got? They say the disruption of urban centers. So basically when Rome fell, many urban centers declined. Okay, great. So what is that? What the hell does that even mean? And there was a significant reduction in trade and economic activity. We already covered that. All right, so declining economic activity means that everything suddenly gets covered in dirt and rock. And nobody does anything to stop it, by the way. Everybody just kind of stands there, and dirt and rock just sort of build up under their feet, and nobody uses those old buildings until 1,000 years later. Oddly enough, 1,000 years later, suddenly, oh, hey, look at all this Roman stuff that's buried. Let's undig it. Yeah, or dig it up. Undig it, yeah. Okay. So they also say cultural and education declined. Why would any of this stuff decline out of nowhere? Right? It's like just one day, all of a sudden, for no reason at all, or their reasoning is economy and invasions, right? That's all they've got. They have nothing else. They actually can't tell you what happened, because what actually happened is a lot of crazy stuff, right? And it does have to do with catastrophism, absolutely. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Not even in this show. Not even going to talk about it in this show. All right. So I love how they also blame the spread of Christianity, dude. They like, So Christianity starts to spread and everybody becomes stupid, right? And now that's the butt of the joke. Now, I don't believe in God. I'm not religious and I'm not anything like that. But it is funny how nowadays, especially nowadays in our time, militant atheists just absolutely dogpile on Christianity and blame Christianity for like all of these horrible things, even though they have no proof of any of it, right? They just go off of their atheism garbage and they make it real. They say, hey, it must have been Christians. Yeah, hate on Christians. Social media told me to hate on these people, so I hate on them. Yeah, anyway, okay. So, and then invasions, right? Invasions are another thing. They say barbarian invasions. You ever ask yourself or wonder what the hell is a barbarian? Like, this term is thrown around, and everybody just thinks that these dudes in loincloths and clubs were just like running around, just absolutely just swarming over civilized people, no problem, right? These random barbarians that just kind of spawn out of nowhere, just show up and just dominate. Like, like the concept of the... Anyway, that's what they say, right? They say these random barbarians, whatever the hell that means. Oh yeah, and by the way, barbarians are basically used for whatever historians want to use them for to fit into something that they do not know. That is literally why the term barbarian is used nowadays. It's not where it came from, but that's what it's basically used nowadays. Oh yeah, barbarians show up. Okay, so barbarians show up. They cause economic decline, everybody suddenly gets stupid, but then Christianity spreads, and then suddenly dozens to hundreds of feet of rock and dirt suddenly go all over the entire Roman Empire, and everything is buried. That's the Dark Ages, man. That is what these people believe. It's unbelievably stupid. And the only reason they believe this is because some dudes back in the Renaissance wrote some corrupt forgery garbage. All right? So, even at this point in time, just using common sense, basic common sense, by the way, you guys all know it. Basic common sense does not exist in society anymore. It's done. It is gone. But if you employ just basic common sense against everything that the Dark Ages claims to have happened, you can walk away laughing and discarding it. You don't even need to use critical thinking. We don't even need to go that far. I don't even need to show you the evidence I'm about to show you that begins to disprove it. There's tons of evidence, by the way. I don't know what time we're on right now, and I know I've been just ranting and raving, but this is important. We'll go for a little while. Okay, so, damn, I'm already at 20 minutes. Okay, all right, so here's the evidence. Let's start with some basic evidence, and then we'll do another show later that shows more evidence of how ridiculous the Dark Ages are. Now, let's go here. All right, so here you see a picture of a tile configuration. What's the date on this tile configuration? What is the date that our miraculous mainstream historians say? They say that this tile was made in 900 AD. All right, 900 AD, that this is where this tile configuration and the tile itself dates back to. Okay. Oh, and this tile configuration was found in Jerusalem's Temple Mount, and as I said, it's dated in about the 8th century. Now remember, this tile is in Jerusalem. All right. Now, let's roll back the clock almost a century, and let's go to Pompeii. In Pompeii, this particular design is dated 1st century AD in Pompeii. Right, so there's definitely some distance between Jerusalem and Pompeii. But for some weird reason, people in Jerusalem decided to copy the people in Pompeii's design 900 years later. That's it. I guess they just, for some weird reason, decided, oh yeah, let's just keep using Pompeii's design from almost a century ago. Why not, right guys? Yeah, why not? Oh, and you know what? Let's also use the exact same kind of tiles that was used back then as well. Oh, yeah, okay. This is what they want us to believe, dude. This is what they honestly believe, that for some magical reason that people in the 8th century AD decided to copy, for no reason at all, the tile workings of the 1st century in Pompeii. All right, so if this doesn't make sense, basically, here's what mainstream academia wants us to believe. That in the 1st century AD, Pompeii, was doing their tile work in this very specific kind of design. They're doing their thing, and then suddenly nothing. Dark Ages for like 1,000 years. Everybody goes to crap. There's apparently economic destruction and barbarians and God knows what else happens. And the second all of that ends, about a century later, everybody picks up right exactly where they left off design-wise. Now, for anybody with an IQ above 40, this is a problem. Because there is no reason to believe that people in the past would just magically pick up where civilization ended almost 1,000 years ago and just keep carrying on as if nothing happened. And that is the craziest part about all of this. So I know I'm running out of time, so we'll get into more evidence in another show. But basically, here's what's going on. The Dark Ages is just randomly inserted into this 1,000-year block. Everything that happens before it, it happens, blah, 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 it leads up to the Dark Ages. Dark Ages happen, and then when civilization picks back up again, it picks back up in a way as if nothing happened at all. It's as if the Dark Ages never existed. Right? So people just go from building a very certain style to all of a sudden Dark Ages. And then the second the Dark Ages end, they pick right back up building in the exact same style. It gets even worse, and I'll give you a teaser for the next one, for example, but it's so bad, the building stuff is so bad, the evidence for the Dark Ages is so horrible. Basically, even the chemical makeup of the materials they use proves that there was no such thing as the Dark Ages, right? Because the historians literally believe that people in the first century built a certain way. Dark Ages happened, and then they go right back to building in the exact same way. I just said that, right? But not only do the people go right back to building in the exact same way they did in the first century, they also use the exact same tiles and rock, etc., chemically, that are dated from that exact same time period. This is not argued by mainstream, by the way. Mainstream is well aware of this problem, right? So there's a 1,000-year gap, and for some weird reason, humanity decides to literally pick right back up where humanity 1,000 years ago left off, down to the chemical signature. How does mainstream get away with this? They say that these people are reusing the stuff from the first century. That's their excuse. They literally say that the people suddenly, magically, once the Dark Ages end, they just start reusing all the stuff that the people were using at the turn of the first millennium. Yeah, that's it. Or the first millennium. Yeah, that is literally what these people want us to believe. It is insane. It is absolutely insane. Humans do not sit around for 1,000 years doing nothing. It is not possible. Humanity does not do that. Humanity will continue to move forward in some fashion or another, and you will have evidence for that forward momentum. The Dark Ages has absolutely none of this evidence, and the evidence that the mainstream uses to prove the Dark Ages is unbelievably ridiculous. It is forged, false, scientifically garbage, and they ignore the science that proves the Dark Ages didn't happen. They do. They ignore it, and they openly ignore it, but you know what? They know they can get away with it because nobody's going to challenge them. Why? Because they're in the perceived authoritative positions. Okay. All right. So it took me like 30 minutes to get to the point, but basically this is the first piece of evidence, these two pieces of tile here, that show you the ridiculousness of the Dark Ages. Now there is a ton more evidence that I want to show you guys, and I realize I just wasted about 30 minutes just to get to the point of two different tiles. And fair enough, if you're looking at this right now and you're like, dude, this guy is crazy, all he did was show me some tiles. Yes, the evidence is objectively there, but I need more than that, and I agree. You should get more than that. So in the next show, I'll deliver even more evidence, and we can build up a strong case to get rid of the Dark Ages in our chronology.